Today's theme to start out the show is Joe Biden, and the mainstream is actually losing confidence in Joe Biden. Now, here's what made me think of this. I got an email from my cousin, who's a great guy, but he's a little more mainstream Dem than myself, and by a little more, I mean a lot more. But he's even worked in politics before, and he's a good guy. He wants to do the right thing. Just strategically, we have our differences of opinion. But he sent this to me, and he expressed a lot of concern about Joe Biden. And I think that is slowly creeping into mainstream America. People who have been paying a lot of attention, people who have been really following things, people who are kind of outside the system and progressives and so forth. We sniffed Joe Biden out a long, long time ago. We sniffed Joe Biden out even before he was sniffing hair. But I think a lot of kind of like general mainstream America, if you will, they're not convinced that he is, first of all, a scam. Second of all, he would get crushed. He would lose. He would lose worse than Hillary did, and we know this. But now I think the greater masses are waking up to this too. I've used the word mass in several different contexts today. Did you notice that? Anyway, that's weird. Hello, Lucy. All right, so let's go to this article. This is from the Intelligencer and New York Mag. The zombie campaign. Joe Biden is the least formidable frontrunner ever. Will it matter? Inevitably, he arrives late by SUV or van. The former vice president is thin, and yes, he's old. He dresses neatly and always in blue. Staff envelope him. There's the body man, the advance man, the videographer, the photographer, the digital director, blah, 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 blah. Okay. The looming presence of the last guy, Jim, is especially important for optics. Jim is tall and official looking. He greets the world chest first, his hands resting in a dignified clasp, his expression even, his mouth unmoving. Most people assume that he's a Secret Service agent, which he was. But ex-VPs don't get security for life the way ex-presidents do. Most people don't know that, not even the political savvy types, blah, 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 blah. And it is a production. This is true even when the event is small, which it often is, because the stakes never are. Joe Biden speaking off the cuff is something the entire campaign seems to focus on preventing at all costs. The first part, the reading of his speech, he almost always gets right. Even when he makes changes, rearranges the order of the words, skipping over a few, adding others. How could he not get that right? He's been delivering the same version of it for more than 40 years and living it for longer. He could deliver it in his sleep if he ever sleeps. It's like my father always said, Joey, a job is about more than a paycheck. It's about your dignity. It's about being able to look your child in the eye and say it's going to be okay. There is an undercurrent. This is the important part here. There is an undercurrent of shame that pulses throughout. This idea that the unequalness of our society is embarrassing for those who have access to less, rather than embarrassing for those who have more than anyone could need. And then they go on to when he greets people, he's swarmed by, the few people who still have confidence in him. But what does this article tell us? Now keep in mind, this is a very mainstream article. And by mainstream, I don't mean the mainstream media, because I don't call it that. It's the corporate media. But it's mainstream as in it's written for the general person who may not be paying a ton of attention to the election as of now. That's who it's written for. It focuses on aesthetics at first. It focuses on his appearance and the appearance of his team. But then when it gets into the nitty-gritty, it's kind of sugarcoating, yet still delivering the theme we already know. This guy has been saying the same thing for 40 years, and he's been living it. Now, when they say he's been saying the same thing for 40 years, they don't mean he's had the same policy ideas and messages around those policies for 40 years, and he's been living it. That applies to a Bernie Sanders. What they mean, and they even get into this in the article, they mean he's been doing the same anecdotes for 40 years. He hasn't reinvented his anecdotes with the times. You could hear Joe Biden give a speech in the 80s, and it would pretty much be the same thing. And he's been living it for 40 years, standing for nothing and getting things wrong. That's what that's thinly veiled code for. He's been doing the same thing. He's a by-the-book, standard, blank suit politician. And when they say there's an amount of shame in the air, as if he's trying to cast shame on poor people, no. What they're really saying is that this is a soulless campaign. And I don't think they're intentionally trying to say this stuff. I think it's coming through anyway. That a general person who probably wants to at least give Biden the benefit of the doubt. I'd imagine the author of this piece wants to at least be able to give Biden the benefit of the doubt, if not straight up support him, and they can't do it. They can't. I mean, he has a few fans who are excited to meet him. That's the only thing they can really say. There's shame in the air. He delivers the same tired anecdotes he's been doing for 40 years. It's underwhelming. It's sparsely attended. His campaign doesn't want him to speak. Did you see that? Oh, they want to minimize off-the-cuff speeches by Joe Biden. That was in the article. No. Again, you're sugarcoating a little bit. They want him to speak as little as possible. Why? Because he does the shit that Chaos Agent 11 just pointed out a little bit earlier. Because he doesn't know how to handle criticism. He doesn't know how to handle voters. He doesn't know how to talk to people unless he's just speaking in the anecdotes that he's been doing for 40 years. You actually confront this guy on his corruption. He doesn't know what to do. He's a deer in headlights because he knows he can't defend himself. And he's out of touch about it. Maybe at one point in time, Joe Biden was better at hiding his corruption. Maybe. When he was Obama's VP, he was just kind of nice old Uncle Joe or whatever, because people weren't really paying attention to him. He was just in the background being weird. But he can't do it anymore. He can't hide it. So what the article says, they don't want him doing off-the-cuff speeches. No. You don't need the phrase off-the-cuff in there. They don't want him speaking. Because Joe Biden's campaign knows that whenever he speaks, people like him less. Whenever he speaks, his poll numbers go down. You know, the last time a presidential nominee had that problem, or a presidential candidate had that problem, it was Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton had the same problem. Every time she spoke, her poll numbers would go down. That's why she didn't go to a lot of places. She did not have the ability to raise her poll numbers. People liked her less every time she spoke. And if you ever hear her speak, you know why. If you ever see her on television or on a podcast embarrassing herself, you know why she has that issue. Well, Joe Biden has that same issue, potentially even worse. And his campaign knows it. And you think somebody like that would have any chance in hell against Donald Trump? Donald Trump, who lives and breathes sound bites. And if Donald Trump gets the sound bites he wants, which he will with a Joe Biden is going to get crushed. That's one reason Joe Biden will get crushed, is because he cannot handle Trump. The other reason he will get crushed is because of his past. He has been on the wrong side of most issues his entire career. I mean, go down the list. The crime bill, Patriot Act, Iraq War, healthcare. Joe Biden was for a wall, by the way. You can find that footage out there. Joe Biden was for a wall around Mexico. He was for it. So another reason Joe Biden will get crushed, to beat Trump, you need unlikely voters, people who aren't going to get up and vote, and you need undecided voters to go to your side. Joe Biden will get neither of those two things. He would get neither of those. He would not get one of those two things. He wouldn't even get all the Democrats. So he might get a couple Republicans because he basically is a Republican. But again, that's the strategy they tried with Hillary. We're going to try to get the Republicans who don't want such a mean-talking Trump. How'd that work out? How'd that work? So here you have a very soft, thinly veiled piece that still delivers the message: Joe Biden is unelectable. He does not have a shot in hell. And he's just at best a blank suit. That is the theme of this article. that we could have summarized that article in one sentence, and mainstream America, quote unquote, the masses. There you go again. I don't know why. Something in the air. They're noticing. So hopefully the masses continue to notice this. Because if Joe Biden's the nominee, we are guaranteed 4 more years of Trump. And here's an article. I mean, it's very sugar-coated. They put it very gently, because that's what the corporate media does. Very gently, this article. But the themes are still there. Joe Biden's uninspiring. Joe Biden barely gets anyone out to see him except for a few diehards. Joe Biden has been doing the same gimmicks for 40 years. He hasn't been standing for the same policies for 40 years. That's a good thing. If he's been consistent for 40 years the way Bernie Sanders has been consistent for 40 years, that's a good thing. That's not what they mean when they say he's been doing the same. They mean he has the same gimmicks. That's why he talks about record players. Which, I love vinyl, don't get me wrong, but you get the idea. So hopefully this continues, and hopefully even the gloves are off a little bit, but it looks like the mainstream is waking up that Biden, he ain't the guy. He ain't the guy. All right.
Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. You can tweet me an article at Ron Placone. We'll go through it together and make it our own. Get your